Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talking Logistics, where we have conversations with thought leaders and newsmakers in the supply chain logistics industry. It's my great pleasure to welcome to today's program Chuck Papa, who's Senior VP of Sales at Transplace. And today we're going to talk about managed services versus software as a service. Which path is right for you? Now, when it comes to how to best manage your transportation operations, a lot of shippers, sometimes find themselves at the crossroads. Should they implement the transportation management system, whether in-house or via software as a service? Should they outsource everything to a logistics service provider or take some kind of hybrid approach? But the right approach, the right path for one company may not necessarily be the best path for a different company. So what are the factors that companies need to consider to determine which is the best path for them? What are the pros and cons of each one? And if you decide to go down the managed services route, what are some of the factors you should look for in a partner? Well, those are some of the questions we're going to address in today's episode, and it's great to have Chuck here on the program, who's kind of on the front lines of this to share his insights and advice on this topic. So, Chuck, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Adrian. Happy to be here. Look forward to the conversation.
Great. We've had many of your colleagues there at Transplace on the program before. This is your first time, so like I always like to do whenever we bring someone new to the program is before we dive into the topic. Try to get a little bit of understanding of how and why you got involved in this crazy industry that we're in to begin with. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about your career path?
Sure.
How and why you got involved with the logistics and what your current role and responsibilities are there at Transplace.
Sure. It is a crazy path. I didn't know about logistics or supply chain when I first graduated. And actually, I started my career in IT. And how I got into logistics and transportation was, from an IT perspective, I was supporting a GE business unit from a systems perspective, which is how I learned about logistics and transportation and made the decision to jump into it from a career perspective, and had been in it ever since for over 25 years in various roles of operations, IT, and procurement. And today I run our enterprise sales for Transplace.
Great. It never ceases to amaze me, kind of the different paths and starting points that people have that ultimately lead them to logistics.
Yeah, it is fun. It's a fun path, and I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, no, likewise. So let's start with, defining, managed services, because that's a topic that a term that, I think a lot of folks use in the industry, but I think it means different things to different people. So what is it, what is managed services, and how does it differ, let's say, from traditional, transportation outsourcing?
From a definitions perspective, I don't think it's much different. It's really when a company decides they need help and improvement in their transportation capabilities and performance, and they make a decision to outsource. Definition's the same. I think what's different is in the details of that outsourcing question. I think from a traditional outsource, people think of it's an all or nothing game. In a managed services outsource, it's not. It's assessing what's important to you, what do you view as strategic versus tactical, and then making more of a decision on what do I want to keep versus what do I want to outsource. It's not outsourcing all of the decision-making process.
Right. Yeah, that's what I see a lot of times. Sometimes a lot of companies, they may have, some, transportation folks internally that are responsible for some things, but they need, coverage in other areas. Some companies may want to keep procurement in-house, but the day-to-day execution, they want to, augment that with some specialists in that area. Do you see that kind of being kind of the procurement piece tends to be something that companies tend to want to hold on to more, and the day-to-day execution and the continuous improvement, something that they may want to, tap into a managed services partner for?
No, you're right on. Absolutely. And that's probably the biggest area where a lot of companies decide to retain ownership of the carrier contracting process. They still may look to us to help support it from an annual tactical procurement bid event, leveraging our scale, resources, and our processes, but strategically decide to take ownership of those carriers contracting and ownership. Additionally, logistics engineering. Some organizations want to tap us for logistics engineering services. Other organizations have made that investment from a supply chain perspective and will do the network and inventory analysis themselves.
Great. And I would think, one of the things that I've seen with a lot of these relationships is that they evolve over time, right? Because you may what the specific needs are today and the capabilities that a customer and a shipper might have today are going to be different than maybe a year or 2 years or 3 years down the road. So, the kind of the nature of the relationship kind of evolves over time. Is that something that you see as well with the companies you work with?
Oh, absolutely. And not just, due to what's changing in the market, but change in leadership direction and strategy. And the best one, it makes me laugh when I think about it. And I think it shows to the flexibility of who we are as an organization. We had a large company that outsourced everything to us, managed services. So it was our technology and, our people running the planning and execution, had a leadership change, decided, hey, we want to bring it back in-house, continued to use our technology, but it was our hands off the keyboard and then our customers' hands on the keyboard. Went about a year and a half, 2 years. Leadership changed again, made another directional change and decided to outsource the planning and execution back to us. So it's not just driven by market conditions, but also leadership direction.
Yeah, interesting. So let's talk now about the technology. That's the other path, right? So I've been kind of looking at the transportation management systems market now for over 18 years, and TMS used to be one of those applications like many logistics supply chain applications. They used to be deployed inside the four walls. You fast forward to today, kind of software as a service, cloud deployment tends to be the dominant model there. What benefits do you see that as well? SaaS being the dominant model. And number two, what benefits do you see or companies are looking for from a SaaS deployment model, versus, let's say, the traditional in-house?
Yeah, I think no doubt SaaS is the dominant model. And I think there's three key areas that drive that. First and foremost, it mitigates IT resources internally to an organization. Doesn't eliminate it completely because you still need support on the integration for larger shippers. But it significantly mitigates the need for IT support. From a financial perspective, no capital funding up front, right? It changes the way it looks on the balance sheet and moves it to the expense line. And then it also assures that you're running the most recent technology, right? In a SaaS environment. You don't have to worry about trying to upgrade every 3 years. Going the SaaS model, you're always assured you're going to be on the latest and greatest technology, both from a infrastructure perspective, as well as getting access to new functionality and capabilities that come out.
Yeah, I love that last point because a lot of times what you find is that with the traditional deployment model across all different types of applications, companies are running, those that do it in-house, they're running versions that are 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, because it is historically was kind of a disruptive type of environment. But I think one of the things with software as a service, not getting too technical in the weeds, going too much in the weeds in the technical side of things, just because of the development process that takes place now, you're kind of continuously upgrading and enhancing the solution, which it becomes less disruptive, and it's become something you don't have to think about as much.
Exactly. And for us, as an example, we do a release every month. So there's never a big impact to the overall infrastructure and capability, which mitigates the risk for everyone using the technology. But at the same time, over a 12-month period, you get a lot of new capability built into the software as well, versus waiting every 4 to 5 to 6 years.
Right. So let's get to kind of the heart of the topic here. So if I'm a shipper and I'm trying to decide between, let's say software as a service, the only approach, or, managed services, how do I determine which path is the right one for me? What factors should I be considering?
It comes down to what we discussed earlier, is what do you view as core and strategic to you as an organization, right? That's going to help determine what path do you want to go down, okay? Are you going to be able to continue to invest in the resources? I think the biggest gap is the biggest opportunity for companies to assess is, are you going to continue to invest long-term in the resources as well? When somebody goes down the path of implementing for the first time or doing that upgrade, there's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of resources around it. So getting the initial deployment and getting year one, I'll call it, results is very easy to do, because you've gone through that training, you've gone through the process change as well. Typically after year 2, year 3, you see a degradation in performance because people haven't invested in the team or continued to invest in the team. You start to see attrition in the organization. People who were part of the initial implementation have moved on, and they didn't have a good succession plan in place to retrain the new associates coming in and continuing to operationalize the technology from a process management perspective. It becomes more of button pushing than it becomes, actually managing the business operations day to day.
Just to build on that a little bit, one of the things that I see, and I always tell folks around a transportation management system, to your point, it could be perfect, when you first deploy it on day one, right? Because it's, ideally the TMS on that day one, when you go live, the constraints, everything that you've built into the system is reflective of the operating realities
Yes, it
of
is.
when you go live. But we all know that, your transportation operations, your supply chains are continuously changing. So I tell people, your TMS is almost like a car. You have to keep it in tune in order for it to continue to deliver the results. But, if no one's looking at it from how do we tweak the constraints? How do we, change the rates, or, all these things that go into driving continuous improvement, you're going to see, the performance start to degrade. And I think that's one of the key things I see from a managed services perspective, is the ability to have a team in place that is not only going to be managing the day-to-day stuff, but from a technology standpoint is also going to be making those changes or those tweaks to the TMS to kind of make it reflective of that, as the operating realities continue to change. Is that kind of something that you see as well?
Exactly right. It's the master data management. It's the maintenance of the application. TMSs are at some scale at an ERP level. You've got to maintain them, to your point, and you've got to adjust it as your network changes, right? Whether it's rates, new locations, what have you. And it's even the performance management of your carrier base as a great example. That's another area we see that degradation occur. Compliance is good up front with the carriers. You're getting real-time or near real-time updates and so forth, pickup, delivery, check calls. And after time, if you don't continue to manage that, you'll see a degradation in performance. But you're spot on. It's making sure you're continuing to invest in maintaining your system from a master data management, from a network perspective.
The other thing I see is, and I wrote a post a couple of years ago, kind of comparing, managed services to Flex Armstrong. You remember that toy we used to?
Yeah. Now we're dating ourselves. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So, where you can basically, flex up and down depending on what your needs are. So some companies, they may go through kind of an M&A activity. So now they've got some rationalization that they need to take place, and some, whether, like you mentioned before, some network design capabilities that they might need at the time. In other cases, they may just be going through a growth spurt, and they just, the decision is, do we hire a ton and build out a huge, transportation department, or do we, address this growth and demand by tapping in a partner that can help us with, this additional need that we have from a transportation operations standpoint. So I see that as well as another, driving factors. Is that something that, with some of your customers you're seeing as well?
Yeah. So we refer to that as the network effect, right? So the value of a SaaS environment, for one, it's having everything in one instance of the application. So providing that visibility from a network and scale perspective allows us, from a managed services perspective, to create a lot of opportunities across our customers and help facilitate that collaboration. Finding carriers that work for carrier customer A balances the network for customer B and introducing them, as an example. Co-loading and sharing is, it's buzzwords that have been around for years, I think are really starting to take effect now and really becoming operationalized, of sharing the four walls of a trailer, or a fleet across multiple customers, continuous moves and so forth. Is really starting to mature within the industry. Although been talked about for years, I think in the last 2 years have really become truly capable services that providers like us can offer to the customer base. So it's that network effect. Having that one system of record, that one instance, allows us to help operationalize a lot of those capabilities and provide collaborative opportunities for our customers.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I've been a huge proponent of, the network effect, if you will, and the opportunity that brings to the table from, enhanced collaboration, and particularly in this environment that we're in right now with, tight capacity, more demanding customer requirements. I've always argued that, in order to, raise the bar on performance, you got to do things differently, and being able to leverage a network and network platform to enable enhanced collaboration is certainly something that's been talked about, to your point, for a long time. But I think the time, if not now, then I don't know when it will happen, because things are just so challenging in the market today.
Yeah, and I think related to that, it's easier for us to do that collaboration as a managed provider versus with our SaaS customers, because part of it's change management. And we as a managed service provider, we help drive change within a customer organization, where our SaaS customers, we can still identify those opportunities, but getting them to operationalize it tends to be more challenging.
Right. That's a good point. So based on kind of the customers you work with and kind of you speak with, I mean, are you seeing greater demand for managed services, software as a service, or just kind of demand equal for both?
That's a great question. And let me answer it this way. And I think it's based on who you are as a shipper and where you are in the maturity of your organization. We're seeing customers who have had in-house TMSs have come end of life, like we talked about earlier. It's been 5, 6, 7 years. They're forced to make a change, are making a decision rather than upgrade or make just the technology change, are gearing more towards the managed services solution. Shippers who don't have any capabilities in-house from a technology perspective tend to go down the SaaS route first. So I'd say it's probably equal from that aspect. It's just a different degree of who the profile of the shipper is that's driving that decision.
Right. Yeah, no, I see the same. I see the same things too. So let's say if I'm a shipper and I decide to go down that software as a service route. I mean, what are some of the things or factors that or steps I should take to ensure not only a successful, to what we talked about before, a successful initial deployment, but ongoing success moving forward?
And that's the key. It's the ongoing. Are you going to be able to make the continued investment in your team and the resources around it and maintaining the system from an operational perspective, right? Are you going to have that right succession plan? So the key question needs to be, is transportation and supply chain tactically from a transportation perspective an area we will continue to invest in down the road?
To that point, I mean, we've done a lot of writing and talking about, with regard to TMS, the role and importance of that power user. And a lot of times, that power user may leave the company or may get, change roles within the company. And then if they haven't, you talked about succession plan, right? If you haven't adequately trained the next person up or other people, you kind of then get yourself in a situation that you might not, be able to, you might have some bump in performance there while you get somebody else trained up.
Absolutely. You can inherently see that slide when that doesn't happen.
Yeah. So when you look across your managed services clients, I mean, what factors define, a successful relationship? I mean, what factors or attributes, if I'm a shipper, should I look for in a potential partner to make sure that, I'm making the right decision there?
I think that the key most from my perspective, it's transparency, right? The provider that you're talking to, are they going to be transparent on how they're making their money, right? Meaning that that they're not trying to push other internal services as part of their overall solution, because that's not necessarily in the best interest of you as a shipper. It's, hey, can my model and my operating model with my provider stand alone by itself? And will the provider, assure me that none of my other internal services are required as part of the overall solution. And that's just to make sure there's independency there, that they're looking out for the best overall solution for you as a key customer, right? Are they going to drive performance and service as a standalone for your operation?
No, I would think that as part of that, I mean, there's a lot of, as in any kind of outsourced relationship, there's quarterly, reviews, there's metrics that you define that you're all, both looking at. So it's I would assume having a well-defined, management and governance structure between the two parties is also important.
Oh, that's absolutely critical. And for us, it's standard operating procedure. We do quarterly business reviews. And the way it's really geared is we have a weekly, monthly, and a quarterly process. Quarterly is geared more strategic. Monthly and weekly are geared more tactical. So you've got to have that cadence in place. Companies have to realize it's not hey, I hiked it over to the wall, washed my hands of it, and I'm out of it. It's still your business. It's still your customers. It's very important for our customers to stay involved with us actively.
One of the things I hear a lot from shippers, across the board, regardless of what kind of outsourced relationship they have, is that they're always looking to their partner to provide them with, tell me what I don't already know, right? Or give me some innovative ideas or ways that I can differentiate from my competition. Is that something that you continue to hear from your, clients as well? It's like they're looking for that, be a third party source of innovation and ideas.
Oh yeah, that's always the constant drive for us is what have you done for me lately? What are you doing that's innovative that I can take advantage of, right? Of course, everybody wants it exclusive to them, which is not the reality of the situation either. But it's our job to constantly bring those continuous opportunities and innovation to our customers. We have a whole process and methodology and team that's built just around that because reality is year 1 and 2 and even 3 is easy to find savings. It's years 4, 5, and 6. What do we do to continue to drive improvement and value over time? And that's what we've operationalized with a program we call Value Improvement Program. That's where the rubber hits the road, if you will. That you want to continue the relationship beyond 4, 5, and 6 years. And we have some of our longest tenured customers are well over 15 years, and that's I think a testament to our ability to continue to drive value for our customers year over year.
I've sometimes heard it, that, once the honeymoon phase is over, kind of comparing it to kind of a marriage, right? Once the honeymoon phase is over, how do you keep that love and relationship going, in the latter years? So,
and it's you can't hide behind. One of our senior operators always said, we're not doing our job unless we're having a heated breath conversation, meaning I'm pushing you, you're pushing me. Realizing, as a provider, we're gonna stub our toe and we're going to fall down. It's a matter of how do we recover from those instances, because none of us are perfect. It's not the reality of it. But if we're not constantly challenging our customers and making changes and driving continuous improvement, then we're not doing our job.
Yeah, great point. It ultimately boils down to, having clear and effective and honest communication, building that trust and then, building that partnership. Chuck, we're kind of running out of time here, so I'm just going to go right to my last question. As a way to wrap up, I mean, if I'm still undecided on which path to take, I mean, what question should I ask myself to help me, bring me closer to making a decision?
I still think it's what's your strategy long term, right? Can I sustain the resources, the commitment, the investment, in not just the technology side, but from the operational side, and go out there and kick the tires, right? It's go benchmark. That's probably the easiest thing to help companies determine what's the right path for them.
Great. So, like I always say at the end of all our episodes, we always just manage to, scratch the surface on these topics, but I think we covered a lot of ground today. You provided some great insights and advice. So thank you again for making the time to be with us today.
I appreciate it. I enjoyed it. Thanks again.
Great. I want to thank those of you that joined us. If you're watching this episode on demand, either at the TransPlace website or on the Talking Logistics website, and you've got a question or a comment for Chuck, you can post it there, and I'm sure he'll be more than happy to respond via that medium. Again, thank you all, and look forward to seeing you in a future episode of Talking Logistics. Have a great day.